Te tatra tadrishur bala mahasattvam avastitam tatra survajra nirbhinnam gire shringami vachutam. Right by the reservoir, the boys saw a gigantic body resembling a mountain peak, broken and struck down by a thunderbolt. They were afraid even to see such a huge living being. Savai bako nama mahan asuro bakarupadrik agatya sahasa krishnam hikshnathundro grasadbali. That great bodied demon was named Bakasura. He had assumed the body of a duck with a very sharp beak. Having come there, he immediately swallowed Krishna. And now, text 49. Does everybody have text 49 up and available? Would you like to maybe share, read off of Prabhuji's screen together?
Thank you.
So you can go ahead and repeat after me. Krishnam Mahabhakagrastam
Krishna Mahavakagrastam
Drishtva Ramadayorbaka
Drishta Ramadavaka
Bahurindriyani va
Bahurindriyani va
Vina Pranam Vichetasaha
Dina Pranam Vichetasaha
Krishnam Mahabhakagrastam
Krishna Mahavakagrastam
Drishtva Ramadayorbaka
Drishta Ramayadarbaka
Bahurindriyani va
Bahurindriyani va
Vina Pranam Vichetasaha.
Vina Pranam Vichetasaha.
Please go ahead and recite.
Krishna Mahavakagrastam
Krishna Mahavakagrastam
Drishva Ramadayoka
Drishta Ramayadarbaka
Bahuhu Indriyaniva
Bahurindriyani va
Vina Pranam Vichetasaha.
Vina Pranam Vichetasaha.
Anyone else? Okay, so we'll go ahead and hear the word-for-word translation. Krishnam,
Krishna
unto Krishna,
unto Krishna
Mahabhakagrastam,
Mahavakagrastam
swallowed by the great duck.
Followed by the great duck.
Drishtva,
Drishta
seeing this incident,
Seeing this incident,
Rama Adaya Arbhaka,
Ramadaya Arbaka,
all the other boys,
all the
all the
other
other boys,
headed by Balaram,
headed by Balaram,
Bhavuvuhu,
Baburbuhu
became overwhelmed.
became overwhelmed.
Indriyani,
Indriyani
senses.
Senses.
Iva,
Iva,
like.
like
Vina,
Vina,
without.
without
Pranam,
Pranam
life.
life
Vichetasaha,
Vichetasaha
very much bewildered.
very much bewildered,
Almost unconscious.
almost
unconscious.
Translation and purport. I should have wrote. When Balaram and the other boys saw that Krishna had been devoured by the gigantic duck, they became almost unconscious, like senses without life. Purport. Although Balaram can do everything, because of intense affection for his brother, he was momentarily bewildered. A similar thing is stated to have happened in connection with Rukmini Harana, the kidnapping of Rukmini. When Krishna, after kidnapping Rukmini, was attacked by all the kings, Rukmini was momentarily bewildered until the Lord took the proper steps. I think that's a good idea to open the windows. Maybe we can open these first and then...
You stand outside.
It's nice to have light. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhava Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki
Jai.
There's an old Sanskrit adage that says, go away from the darkness, go towards the light. So this is one small way we can bring some light in. And now reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we bring the spiritual light in. So I'll just go ahead and say a short invocation before speaking to try and invoke the blessings of the previous Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada and my spiritual master, Sri Sri Gauranitai, on whose mercy I'm depending to be able to possibly say something of value. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghuna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we've got a nice little intimate Sangha this morning for Bhagavatam class. That's good, I don't feel as nervous. And hope that, I think that by your powerful association I'll be able to say something valuable this morning. So I'll just repeat the translation of the 49th verse one last time. When Balaram and the other boys saw that Krishna had been devoured by the gigantic duck, they became almost unconscious, like senses without life. And then the purport, Prabhupada mentions that although Balaram can do everything, because of his intense affection for his brother, he was momentarily bewildered. He was momentarily bewildered into actually being shocked by the fact that Krishna had just been eaten by this gigantic duck demon. And Balaram, along with all the other boys, was worried about Krishna, was worried for Krishna's life. And we might think this seems a little bit unusual, that God would become bewildered and that God would become worried, especially worried that Krishna who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and certainly, obviously eternal and can never die, aside from the fact that he's God and he's infallible. So how is it possible that Balaram, who is also himself the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can become so bewildered, can be put into a state of bewilderment that seems like there's a kind of illusion there, like an illusion that he doesn't realize that Krishna is not in danger. And this is not the first or only time that Balaram is put under some kind of illusion in the land of Vrindavan. In a couple of chapters, we'll hear the pastime where Lord Brahma steals the cowherd boys away from Vrindavan and hides them away in a cave. And his idea is that he's a little bit doubtful that this little cowherd boy with a blackish complexion, who is just playing around and joking with his friends, could possibly be God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's going to play some trick to test whether that's possible or not. So he steals all the cowherd boys away. But what does Krishna do? He immediately expands himself to take to manifest all the forms of the cowherd boys who have been taken away. So now they're actually expansions of Krishna. And Lord Brahma also took away all these calves. Krishna expands himself into the calves. So now you have all these cowherd boys, just as they were before they were stolen, and all the calves, just as they were before they were stolen, still walking around Vrindavan, playing, doing their normal thing, but now they're all expansions of Krishna instead of being actually those cowherd boys. And actually for one whole year, this situation goes on, because Lord Brahma, he steals the cowherd boys away, locks them in the cave, and then he looks back to see what's going to happen. But the scale of time is different on Lord Brahma's plane as it is on the earthly planet. So that just a moment or two where he brought the cowherd boys away and then looked back on earth, that was 1 year of time. And what he saw after that 1 year was that all the cowherd boys were still there, even after just a moment of his looking away and stealing them. They were all still there, and all the cows were still there. He was very bewildered, wondering, how is this possible? But actually, on Vrindavan, it took a whole year. So it was a whole year where these cowherd boys were going home to their mothers and their fathers and just doing their ordinary day-to-day activities. The calves were drinking milk from their mothers, going about their ordinary day-to-day activities. And nobody realized that the real cowherd boys and cows were not actually there, it was Krishna. But one thing that happened is that the mothers of the cowherd boys, they were so much more attracted to their sons than they normally were, because of course Krishna is the all-attractive, and it was Krishna's expansion. And so they were giving even more affection to them than they normally would, and they were just in ecstasy, spending time with their sons. And the same was for the cows. The cows were just so attracted to their calves, they couldn't let them go anywhere. They were just licking them constantly, and when the cows would drink milk from them, they were simply in ecstasy. And also so Balaram, one day, even Balaram actually didn't realize what was going on until one day, at the end of this period of a year, he was just kind of looking around and observing things. And he had noticed how the mothers of the cowherd boys were so attached to their boys, they didn't even want to let them go out away from the home. And that wasn't normal, because the cowherd boys, every day they go out from the home. And Balaram observed that the cowherd men who were herding the cows, it was impossible to keep them separate from the calves. Every time that they separated them from their calves and they would take them out to the forest to graze grass, as was the usual routine, the cows would just escape and run away and go straight back to their calves. And Lord Balaram realized there's something strange here. Like, what's going on? Things aren't as they usually were. I think somehow the people of Vrindavan have been bewildered by some potency. And Balaram was thinking, wait a minute, I'm God. I can't be bewildered by anybody's potency. So how can this possibly be? And then he realized, oh wait, there is one person who's capable of bewildering me, and there's only one. That's Krishna himself. So Krishna must be playing some trick here. So this is another example when Balaram was bewildered, but we see that Balaram, who is the first expansion of Krishna, and who's in this mood of always serving Krishna, then we suppose it's conceivable that Balaram could be bewildered, but only by Krishna. But then that doesn't really answer the mystery of God's being bewildered, because Krishna himself, in his pastime with Mother Yashoda, where Mother Yashoda wants to punish him for breaking a pot of butter and stealing that butter and feeding it to the monkeys, she's feeling, I have to teach my son a lesson, otherwise he'll become spoiled. So Krishna, as he's running away from his mother, who has taken up a stick just to scare Lord Krishna into thinking that I better surrender because she might hit me with a stick. She's chasing after him, and Krishna is actually feeling scared. He's actually feeling worried that he's going to be punished. And he's actually shaking, he's trembling, and he's actually got tears coming from his eyes because he's actually afraid. So how do we understand this? That God is in this situation where he's actually apparently not aware that he's God, and he thinks that he needs to be afraid of this woman who's his mother chasing him with a stick. So one of the superpowers of Krishna, one of the superpowers of God actually, is that by his own potencies, by his own energies, he can actually induce himself into a state of forgetfulness, even forgetfulness of the fact that he's God. And you could call this a kind of divine illusion. And when describing this, somebody might object that, well, but if he's supreme, he's supposed to be omniscient, he's supposed to be fully aware of everything at every time. How can he be supreme if he's able to forget that he's God? How can he be supreme if he's able to forget and come under the influence of something like fear? And so actually, in response to that, we can say that actually if Krishna, or if God, doesn't have the power of willful non-awareness, then he's not supreme. Because there are many, if he's unable to do that, then there would be many areas of experience in life that he would not have access to, that even limited beings like us have access to. Because actually, there are many ways in which we enjoy as a result of not being aware of something. And one example of that is what we call the element of surprise. Somebody may, for example, surprise you with a really nice gift. Like I've seen videos from time to time of, it's like Christmas and they're showing a teenager opening his presents and he didn't really get what he wanted, and then somehow or other the parents coax him to go outside, and what does he see when he goes outside? Parked in the carway, in the driveway, there's a brand new car with a giant bow on top of it, and they're like, oh my god, So getting some kind of surprise gift from somebody is a kind of joy that we might experience. You can even have a surprise birthday party. Somebody organizes a whole birthday party for you, or some other kind of party, and you don't even know about it. And then all of a sudden, somebody's bringing you home, and all of your friends are there, and they pop out from behind the couch, and they say, "Happy birthday!" Wow, you did all this! Oh my God! It's a kind of thing that we sort of relish, right? That we can experience this kind of surprise of an unexpected gift from a loved one that touches our heart. Now, if God was somehow just constantly stuck in a state of knowing everything at every moment, he wouldn't be able to experience that. If he didn't have the power of non-awareness, willful non-awareness, then he'd be deprived of an enjoyable experience that we have access to. But if we're able to enjoy something God is not able to, then how can he be God? He would be incomplete. He couldn't be supreme. So Krishna actually in Vrindavan one day, he's with the cowherd boys, and one of the cowherd boys tells him, "Oh Krishna, I have a very nice sweet for you. Very, very tasty laddu that my mother made. I know you're going to like it so much. Just close your eyes and I'll put it in your mouth for you." And what does he do? Okay, Krishna closes his eyes. He's opening his mouth. He's got great anticipation to taste this sweet. And what does his friend do? His friend picks a flower and stuffs the flower in Krishna's mouth. And Krishna's like... And this was a kind of surprise for Krishna. But it was enjoyable because the cowherd boys, this is what they do, they joke around with each other, they play tricks on each other. And so this was actually a loving expression from that cowherd boy to Krishna. And if Krishna, and actually in that pastime, Krishna actually was surprised. He didn't know that his friend was going to put this flower in his mouth. Now normally, in his all-knowing state, considering that it is his very nature to know everything, then, if he couldn't, by his own potencies, put himself in a state of unawareness, then we can just see that there would be no option for that exchange, for that loving exchange to take place. He would just be like, "Oh Subal, I know you're about to put a flower in my mouth. You cannot fool me. I'm the Supreme." And there would be no room for these kinds of loving expressions between Krishna and his devotees. And so the principle is the same with this case here, where Lord Balaram, because of his intense affection for Krishna, it pushes him to become worried when he sees Krishna gobbled up by this duck, pulled into the mouth of the duck. And actually that's part of a loving expression, that this ability to forget, this ability to become unaware of something on command is actually a kind of superpower. And Krishna has all superpowers in full. And so that's why there's no contradiction between this in Krishna's pastimes. He appears to be forgetful of his nature as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He appears to think that he needs to actually be worried about his mother chasing him with a stick. He's doing this out of a loving reciprocation for the ways in which his devotees want to serve him and take care of him. And so he puts himself in the position of a little helpless child who needs his mother to discipline him. Otherwise, he might grow up as a spoiled brat. So these are the loving exchanges in the spiritual world, and this is not beyond the capability of the Supreme, because nothing is beyond the capability of the Supreme. And so another theme that we see, or another important subject that we see in this verse is how when Balaram and the cowherd boys saw Krishna devoured by the beak of this giant duck, they became so upset, so disturbed, that they almost became unconscious. And there's an analogy given here that it was, at that moment, the cowherd boys were like senses without life. They were like senses without life. We live our day-to-day lives through our senses. We experience through our senses. And if somebody's senses don't have any life, we call that a dead body. So essentially, Krishna here is the life of the cowherd boys' senses. He's the life of their senses. He's the only thing in which they've invested their hopes in life. They haven't invested their hopes in life in anything else. Their senses don't see value in any other sense object aside from Krishna. So that is the exalted state of the cowherd boys, and indeed of all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, who are completely pure devotees of Krishna. Their senses don't see any prospect in money or fame or various kinds of pleasures that can be afforded in this world or even in the spiritual world, where there's far greater pleasures than here. But even in those pleasures themselves, the cowherd boys, even with access to all of those pleasures, the cowherd boys are feeling that without Krishna, there's no point to life. There's nothing in life without Krishna. And so their senses are just dead without the presence of Krishna. You might think that, even if Krishna's gone, even if Krishna's been swallowed up by the duck, hey, we still live in this beautiful place full of opulent foodstuffs and nice palaces and nice sweets and everything. It's like, well, we're not so bad off, we still have a lot of prospect for enjoying it, But that's conditioned consciousness. That's how we feel in the material world, that I'm okay without God as long as I've got like a nice house and a car and everything. But the cowherd boys, Krishna is the life of their senses. And so really, actually, this is ultimately the secret of life, the secret to success in life, is to make Krishna the life of one's senses. There's a very simple formula, actually, for understanding how to become happy. And if we can understand and digest and assimilate this formula into our life, then that will be the perfection of our life. So essentially, there's two things to know, which is that sense gratification is suffering. It's a miserable experience. It always leads to misery. And devotional service, that is actually the supreme happiness. That is perfect happiness. And it's not necessarily so easy to realize this, but if one can realize this, then their life becomes perfect, and they'll stop seeking happiness in places where it can never be found. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yehi samsparshacha bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. It's a very simple verse, but it's packed so much into it. So he says that that particular kind of happiness, which is born by bringing the senses in contact with material sense objects, that particular kind of happiness is actually the source of suffering for the living entity. And those persons who are wise, they don't seek pleasure in those kinds of things. because they can recognize that all such pleasure has a beginning and an end. So this kind of pleasure, the experience of pleasure that we get from sense gratification, it always starts at a particular point and it always ends at a particular point. But a wise person recognizes, well, my existence isn't going to end at any point. My existence doesn't begin at a certain point. So I actually can't be satisfied by any kind of happiness that doesn't last forever. So any kind of happiness that's less than forever is not worth pursuing. So seeing like, okay, if I have an ice cream cone, my pleasure is going to begin the moment that I taste the ice cream cone, and then it's going to end as soon as the ice cream cone is gone. And I invested hard-earned money for that, and then at the end, actually the whole result is just gone, just swept away. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience of you're eating something and it's so nice, but then you finish it before you actually wanted to finish it. Like you look down thinking, I'm only halfway through this pizza. Oh, it's so nice. But then you look down and you realize like, oh, there's only one slice left. Oh no, I thought there was still like half. Like I'm not ready for it to end yet. And so you had the pizza that you wanted, but at the end you're like, no, it ended too soon. That's the nature of all sense gratification. The problem with sense gratification in the material world is it all ends too soon. Because the soul doesn't have an ending. So anything that's got a beginning and an end is guaranteed to end too soon for the spirit soul to get any satisfaction from that. And in this verse, actually, the word dukkha is used, which means suffering. So it's not just that sense gratification can't make us happy, but it's also that we get the exact opposite result of what we were hoping for. We actually gain suffering because we go through this whole process of, oh, I got it, and then it wasn't exactly what I wanted, or it was what I wanted, but now I've lost it. So now we feel frustrated and angry that we didn't get the result that we wanted. And then it just sort of becomes a downward spiral where now that frustration came in, I need to look for something else to make me happy, but then that thing only makes me more frustrated. And then we just go on this downward spiral where we, throughout the course of our life, we just don't get where we wanted to be. We don't find the happiness that we were hoping for. And even if we say like, well yeah, but there was a moment where I did have that pizza and I was experiencing pleasure. There was a moment of pleasure there. So isn't that enough? No, let's just be satisfied, Like Krishna says, he makes an amazing statement in Bhagavad Gita. He says that kama, or lust, or the desire for sense gratification, is nitya vairina. It's the eternal enemy of the living entity. The eternal enemy of the living entity. And in the purport to this verse, Prabhupada at the very end, he says, in this verse, kama refers to that moment of pleasure that you experience when you're engaging in sense gratification. It says that little experience of pleasure, that is the eternal enemy of the living entity. Because that little bit of pleasure, even though overall we can see the whole show of the material world is filled with frustration and difficulty and suffering. We're getting old even though we don't want to get old. We have to die even though we don't want to die. And I may be in the prime of my youth, and all of a sudden I acquire some very serious disease, maybe even a terminal disease that prevents me from enjoying life. And so there's so much suffering in the world, and we're being really treated very roughly and very badly by the material energy at every step. But Maya knows that we need some hope. So we need to have, from time to time, a little bit of pleasure. So I taste the ice cream and, well, I may have just lost my house and my wife may have just divorced me, but I've got a little bit of pleasure in this ice cream. And then the living entity maintains hope that, well, maybe things could look up, Maybe it's not so bad that I just went bankrupt and I just got diagnosed with a terminal disease. Maybe things will look up. That moment of pleasure that we experience in sense gratification is the eternal enemy of the living entity, because by that experience we maintain hope that one day we may find some happiness in this material world. Maybe there is hope. So Krishna consciousness is susukam kartumavyayam. Krishna says that devotional service, bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness has this special quality that it is joyfully performed. It's a very joyful process. It's not just sukham, which means happy. It's su-sukham. Su means very, very much so. It's a very happy affair, and Prabhupada describes that when Krishna says su-sukham, he doesn't just mean that eventually when you complete the process of Krishna consciousness one day and you attain pure love of God, then finally you'll become happy. Prabhupada says even from the very beginning, every stage of Krishna consciousness is so joyful. So that even in the beginning, we're still mired by so many anarthas, so many bad habits causing us trouble, so many unwanted thoughts in our mind disturbing us, and we're not at all advanced on the path. But even there, from the very beginning, one can simply come into the kirtan and experience great relief and great happiness. We see it all the time because we have so many volunteers here at New Mayapur, and they know nothing about kirtan or about Krishna, but Harini invites them to come to the Thursday night kirtan, and of course she does kirtan with them every morning, and then they just come and they just sit and they're just like, wow, they have an experience even without knowing much of anything about Krishna consciousness. And so just from the very beginning, as soon as we're in contact with our real nature, which is to serve Krishna, even just a little bit, it connects with us. Susukam, we can feel some happiness, even at the very beginning, and continuing on the path at every stage. So this is a big contrast with material sense gratification. Material sense gratification, you have to have all the elements just right. You've got to have the sufficient bank balance and everything to get what you desire. And even when you get it, having properly performed all these processes just right, you still don't feel happy. But with devotional service, even you don't have a clue what you're doing, you don't have any qualification, your bank balance is 0 or negative 5,000, you can just sit in the kirtan and immediately you're happy. You can just sit with the devotees and take prasadam with the devotees and hear some Krishna Katha, and immediately it's very satisfying. You don't have to have some great qualification. So Krishna makes it so available. So this little formula, sense gratification is suffering, Krishna consciousness is happiness. If I can just understand this, then my life will be perfect, and I'll stop pursuing unwanted things in the material world, engaging in unwanted activities that actually work against my real welfare. It's not an easy thing to actually come to the point of realizing, but if we can dedicate ourselves to the process of devotional service, then little by little we can certainly assimilate this understanding, digest it, and by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, simply by serving their mission, chanting the holy names and spreading the chanting of the holy names, spreading the process of Krishna consciousness, and taking advantage of it ourselves with seriousness and sincerity in our day-to-day life, we're guaranteed to unlock this realization that finally I'll know, you know what, there's no happiness in this material world. only in Krishna. So let me just withdraw my senses and hopes completely from anything in this material world, and invest it fully in Krishna. And even if we're still going about our material duties, we can do that. There's no hindrance. So it may not seem so easy, but Lord Chaitanya and his representatives, Srila Prabhupada and his representatives, are here present, helping us to make this a reality in our lives, if we just take advantage of their mercy and pray to them. And as Prabhupada also said, actually that mercy is already there, because it is the process of Krishna consciousness, and it's already been given. So you just avail to the process of Krishna consciousness. The mercy is present in that process. So it's there, you just have to take the mercy. So thank you for kindly lending your ears to me for a few moments. I hope that I said something that was valuable or beneficial. Does anybody have any comments or questions or any kind of reflection? Prabhu?
I'm sorry that I didn't hear all class,
Mm-hmm.
but I heard that you mentioned state of forgetfulness of God.
Mm.
And this is exactly the Mayavada theory.
Mm.
Mayavada says that we are God, I am God, you God,
Mm.
and we are in state of forgetfulness.
Mm.
We just play in this material world. And Prabhupada said that God can be very Dharana, he can't be poor, he can't forget anything.
Yeah.
In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I remember everything, all my past lives, avatars, everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you explain, please, what is the difference? Because it's really...
Yes. So Krishna never actually forgets, because he's all-knowing. He knows past, he knows present, he knows future. That's Trikaligya. And like you said, when he tells Arjuna that you and I both, we've existed in many different incarnations, but I remember all of them, whereas you do not. And living entity forgets very easily. At the time of death, when a living entity transfers from one body to another, completely forget everything of their past life, any of their past lives. And for Krishna, this doesn't take place. So he's telling Arjuna, I remember everything. And so when we understand this tattva of God, of Krishna, then it may seem quite bewildering to see that in the pastime with Mother Yashoda, that he's apparently not aware. He appears to not be aware, that he doesn't actually have to be afraid of her, that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so how is it that Krishna can simultaneously maintain a state of constant awareness of everything? He's in the heart of every living entity. He's in every atom. He's all-pervading. And his awareness is completely all-pervading. So his awareness can never be checked. And yet at the same time, he does use his Yogamaya potency to check his awareness so that he can have these loving pastimes. How can those two things happen at the same time? It seems impossible. As soon as we speak of God or the Supreme, we have to speak of Achintya Shakti, inconceivable potencies. The nature of a superior entity is that you cannot conceive of how that person is operating. If two people are playing chess, and one of them is superior chess player, the other one is inferior, the inferior chess player cannot understand how the superior one is moving, why they're making this move, why they're making that move. But the superior chess player can immediately understand a move that's made by the other one. It's immediately obvious, oh, he's coming here, he's planning to take my rook, he's planning to do this. But from the other side, it's inconceivable. Why did he put here? He left himself open. But actually, so that's the nature of the relationship between an inferior and superior living entity. And that's just on the relative platform. Krishna is superior, but on a supreme level. So that means that he's supremely inconceivable. So he can be in a state of supreme perfection where he's always aware of everything. He never forgets anything. He's never unaware of anything. And yet at the same time he can become unaware for the purpose of his pastimes. When in Krishna's pastimes, he sometimes, for example, when he's with the cowherd boys having lunch, he actually will expand into as many forms of himself as there are cowherd boys. And each cowherd boy thinks that, each cowherd boy feels that Krishna is only seeing me. He's only interacting with me. And actually, it's true that Krishna, with him, is only focusing on what that cowherd boy, on his relationship with that cowherd boy. But then at the same time, just next to them, Krishna is there, focusing only on his relationship with that cowherd boy. So how is it possible that Krishna is giving his attention to all cowherd boys, and at the same time, he's only giving his attention to one? Narada Muni was bewildered by this when he visited all the palaces of Krishna in Dwarka, because in each palace, Krishna was with his wife, and he was acting in a different way according to the nature and personality of his wife. So these potencies of God are inconceivable, how he can apparently do opposite things at the same time. He can know and not know. He can be aware, fully aware, and not be aware. So as far as this claim by a Mayavad philosopher that is our situation, that we are God and we've simply forgotten. So what we can do as a test is we can look at the pastimes of Krishna and we can compare our activities with Krishna. So Krishna is able to lift Govardhan Hill just with his pinky. Now if I cannot do that, then I cannot claim to be God. He may at one moment be running from his mother in fear, but then in the next moment he's killing a gigantic duck demon who's as large as a mountain. So we cannot claim to do these things. In Krishna's conversation with Arjuna, at one point he shows Arjuna his universal form, where he manifests the whole universe. He manifests all the hands and legs of everybody in the universe. And Prabhupada would regularly challenge such Mayavadis that, where is your universal form? Show your universal form. So, although Krishna, in his eternal pastimes of reciprocation with his devotees, he may manifest a state of mind that is like forgetfulness. It is not like our forgetfulness. So Krishna's forgetfulness is completely under his control by the power of his energies. And it's not like our forgetfulness. So according to my limited ability, I tried to address that contradiction, but maybe I didn't fully satisfy the response. But please forgive me if I haven't fully. But so that was my attempt. Would you like to add a comment to that?
No?
No?
I'm completely satisfied.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
HG Shantatma Prabhu ki
Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki
Jai.